They had enough ideals to found a nation, but not enough food to survive the winter. Valley Forge, December 1777. 11,000 soldiers camped in the snow. No boots, no blankets, no meat. Feet froze and were amputated. Uniforms rotted on their bodies. And what there was to eat, when there was anything, was a paste of flour, water, and whatever insects already lived in the flour, cooked over open fire. No salt, no flavor, just enough fuel to not die before dawn. These were the men building the United States of America, and what none of them knew yet was that the hunger at Valley Forge was only the first crack in a system about to split open. Not just the army, the entire nation, before it even truly existed. Today we reconstruct how America survived itself, with the help of artificial intelligence. Let's go. To understand why the American Revolution almost failed, you have to understand what it was before it became a nation. It was a machine. 13 colonies operating as separate gears, each with its own government, its own interests, its own rivalries. What held them together wasn't loyalty, it was shared hatred of the British Crown. And hatred, like any fuel, runs out. The system worked. Loud, decentralized, full of contradictions, but it worked. Farmers produced, merchants distributed, ports moved goods, money circulated. New England alone had over 150 rum distilleries. Alcohol consumption reached 4 gallons per person per year, including children. Not from addiction, from necessity. The water frequently killed. Rum, at least, was safe. Then the war started, and the machine began to choke. The first crack was food. On paper, each soldier received a pound of meat per day, a pound of flour, beans, milk, corn, molasses. In practice, supply routes collapsed under the weight of winter and disorganization. The Continental Congress had no real authority to tax, no real money to buy, no real structure to distribute. What reached Valley Forge was whatever was left after everything else had failed. Soldiers ate what they could find. Private Joseph Plum Martin of Connecticut boiled old ox liver and described the aftermath with brutal precision. The pain so violent he discharged the hardened chunks like grape shot from a cannon. He ate sheep's head to avoid waste, ate ox spleen, vomited, and the next day ate again because there was no alternative. And when there was nothing else, there was fire cake, flour, water, nothing more. Dense, tasteless, frequently crawling with weevils already living in the flour stores. The men cooked the insects right into it. Protein is protein when you're starving. But the hunger was only the surface. Underneath it was something equally lethal and almost completely invisible. And it wasn't coming from outside the camp. It was coming from inside every soldier's body. Colonial America had no hygiene culture. Not because people were ignorant, but because the system had never been built to support it. Full baths were rare events, reserved for infants. Adults washed their face and hands each morning with a damp cloth. Sometimes, the powdered wigs that defined the elegance of the era were regularly infested with lice, boiled weekly for cleaning, when the owner could afford the process. The pomade used to style them attracted insects. It was a loop with no exit. Waste went into pits near the houses. The pits sat near water sources. The water contaminated everything. Dysentery, typhoid fever, cholera, endemic diseases that killed in silence, without battle, without glory. Historians estimate that 2/3 of Washington's soldiers at Valley Forge didn't die in combat. They died from infection, diarrhea, pneumonia. The most lethal enemy of the American Revolution wore no red coat. Washington knew. He ordered his men to wash their faces and hands once a day, their shirts once a week. Most ignored the order. The people who actually kept the camp functional, cooking, washing, cleaning, were often women and children who followed the army. Heroes with no name, no record, no statue. The system was cracked at the most basic level possible, the human body. And when the body fails at scale, what comes next is far worse. In 1793, yellow fever reached Philadelphia. Within weeks, the capital of the world's youngest nation emptied. 20,000 people fled. The federal government scattered, courts closed, markets stopped. The streets which already didn't smell particularly good under normal conditions, became corridors of silent death. Doctors argued over the cause. Benjamin Rush blamed rotting coffee at the docks. Alexander Hamilton blamed Caribbean refugees. Neither was right. Mosquitoes were the real vector. Rush had even noted in his diary that mosquitoes were extraordinarily numerous that summer, but he never made the connection. Rush bled his patients toward death, trying to cure them. He publicly proclaimed that black people were immune. Volunteers from the Free African Society went to work as nurses, believing the theory. They fell ill. They died. By the dozens. By the hundreds. Rush admitted his mistake too late. 5,000 dead when it was over. 1 in every 10 Philadelphia residents. The epidemic wasn't contained by medicine, by policy, or by the genius of the founders. It ended because the cold of October killed the mosquitoes. And while the city was dying, the men who were supposed to govern it were busy destroying each other. Hamilton and Jefferson. Washington placed them in the same cabinet because both were indispensable, and both immediately began tearing each other apart. Hamilton saw America as an urban commercial project requiring a strong central government. Jefferson saw Hamilton as a disguised monarchist. Hamilton saw Jefferson as a hypocrite who preached liberty while enslaving hundreds of people at Monticello. Both were right. Both were wrong. Jefferson hired a journalist to destroy Hamilton's reputation. Hamilton responded by exposing Jefferson's contradictions. Hamilton publicly confessed to an extramarital affair to prove the money he had paid was personal blackmail, not treasury embezzlement. His reputation never recovered. Jefferson kept attacking Hamilton for decades, even after his rival's death in a duel in 1804. Meanwhile, the country still had no functional government structure. The Articles of Confederation gave Congress no real power to tax, regulate, or force any state to comply with anything. It was a gentleman's agreement between entities that frequently didn't behave like gentlemen. The proof of collapse came in 1786. Indebted farmers, many of them veterans of the Revolution itself, took up arms against the Massachusetts government. Shays' rebellion lasted months. The federal government had no means to intervene. The nation watched, paralyzed, as its own war heroes marched against the state they had helped create. That was the moment it became clear. The system needed to be rebuilt from the ground up. The Constitution was born in September 1787 as an emergency response to a system coming apart. It was not a document of pure ideals. It was a compromise between factions that disagreed on almost everything. Gouverneur Morris, the man who wrote the preamble, who coined the phrase, "We the people," had preached against slavery with rare eloquence, and conceded on the points that allowed ratification by the southern states. The scar was sewn into the founding fabric from the very first day. First fell the military structure, then public health, then the federal government, then trust between the founders themselves. And only then, when all of it was already cracked, did they come together to try to build a constitution. Systems don't survive because they're perfect. They survive because the cracks don't open all at once. America was lucky. The failures came in sequence, and in the intervals between them, contradictory, selfish, brilliant, all too human men managed to patch enough together for the structure to hold through one more winter. Does that really sound like something that stayed in the past? If you want to keep reconstructing these architectures, the systems that looked solid and had invisible cracks, subscribe to the channel. And in the comments, which collapse do you want me to reconstruct next? I'm Tom, reconstructing how civilizations built their own collapses. And together, we keep history alive. See you in the next era.